tremendous disservice. We have to talk about it to find out what's going on, because the press, honestly, is out of control. The level of dishonesty is out of control.
It's not just fake news we have to worry about. Organizations such as Convention of States Project are guilty of blatant dishonesty as well. COS recently posted this video of then Professor Antonin Scalia, where they selectively cut and piece together snippets from an hour-long video to make him sound as if he fully supports the Convention of States viewpoint. This is very deceptive. Here's just a portion of what COS showed Scalia saying.
Congress is simply unwilling to give attention to many issues which it knows the people are concerned with, and which issues involve restrictions upon the federal government's own power. I think the founders foresaw that, and they provided this method in order to enable a convention to remedy that.
What COS failed to show is that this came from a 1979 public policy forum from the American Enterprise Institute. Back then, they gathered some of the nation's top authorities to discuss different views on vital issues. This particular segment's topic was entitled, "A Constitutional Convention, How Well Would It Work?" Let's view one of Scalia's unedited responses.
All right, Professor Scalia, Richard Revere in the New Yorker suggested that the convention method of amendment might reinstate segregation and even slavery, throw out much or all of the Bill of Rights, eliminate the 14th Amendment's due process clause, and reverse any Supreme Court decision the members didn't like, and perhaps for good measure, eliminate the Supreme Court itself. Now, what would you anticipate from an unlimited convention?
None of that. I suppose it might even pass a bill of attainder to hang Richard Revere. All of those things are possible, I suppose. Just as it's possible that the Congress tomorrow might pass a law abolishing Social Security as of the next day, or eliminating Christmas. Sure, such things are possible, remotely possible. I don't have any fear that such proposals as extreme as he's talking about would come out of the Constitutional Convention. Surely, whether that risk is sufficient to cause you to be opposed to a constitutional convention depends upon how high you think the risk is and how necessary you think the convention is. If you thought the Congress were not necessary for any other purpose, the risk that it might abolish Social Security would probably be enough to cause you to tell them to go home. So it really comes down to whether you think a constitutional convention is necessary. I think it is necessary for some purposes, and I'm willing to accept what seems to me a minimal risk of intemperate action in order to have that achieved. The reason I feel it's necessary is, I think, the reason the founders put in this alternative method of obtaining a constitutional convention, that the Congress is simply unwilling to give attention to many issues which it knows the people are concerned with, and which issues involve restrictions upon the federal government's own power. I think the founders foresaw that, and they provided this method in order to enable a convention to remedy that. If the only way to get that convention is to take this minimal risk, then I think it is a reasonable risk to be undergone.
Did you notice how then Professor Scalia never once said a convention of states? Instead, he called it a constitutional convention. Why would COS even want to use this clip? After all, COS and their friends have repeatedly stated that a constitutional convention and a convention of states are not the same.
And the critical move is to say we're talking about a constitutional convention. The thing that I think we had in 1787. And what I said in my introduction was, we're not talking about a constitutional convention.
Is this a constitutional convention?
No, it's a convention of amendments only.
People get confused between a constitutional convention and a convention of the states under Article 5, properly called a convention for the proposing amendments. The processes and the procedures and the scope are entirely different.
When you look at the practice in the states, and when you look at what the Constitution talks about, it's not talking about creating a constitutional convention. Those words don't exist.
That's correct. The words Constitutional Convention do not appear in the text of Article 5, but neither does the phrase Convention of States. Article 5 actually calls it a convention for proposing amendments. Historically, this same convention is also known as a constitutional convention. If you refer to Black's Law Dictionary, which is the trusted legal dictionary of law for over a century, you will find that since 1910, they have consistently defined a constitutional convention as, quote, a duly constituted assembly of delegates or representatives of the people of a state or nation for the purpose of framing, revising, or amending its constitution. So aren't these two the same thing? COS is clearly deceiving America. Since COS loves using clips and quotes of Scalia, let's show you what they don't want you to see. Here is Justice Scalia's comments from a 2014 interview.
I certainly would not want a constitutional convention. I mean, whoa. Who knows what would come out of that?
I think the clip speaks for itself. Be careful. COS may sound sincere, but don't fall for their deception. An Article 5 convention, a convention of states, a constitutional convention, or whatever you want to call it, is too great a risk because we have no idea what would come out of it, so don't be fooled. Instead, a much safer way to rein in our out-of-control government is through Article 6, not 5. Article 6 obligates both federal and state officials to oppose unconstitutional laws passed by Congress. The same can be said for unconstitutional decisions made by the Supreme Court. By enforcing Article 6, both federal and state officials will not only not enforce any laws, treaties, or Supreme Court decisions that are unconstitutional, they are also required to oppose them. One way to oppose such unconstitutional actions by the federal government, short of educating the electorate and voting new people into office, is by convincing state legislators to nullify a particular unconstitutional law, treaty, or Supreme Court decision. That, in a nutshell, is the Article 6 solution. And if you're willing, for the sake of our great country, we the people can do it. So forget about Article 5 and let's get to work on Article 6.